There are some overlaps between an empath and a highly sensitive person, but there are also distinct differences between the two. Here's a simple example. Imagine yourself going to a social gathering. Everyone is upbeat and positive. As an empath who feels and matches other people's emotion, you will feel the same positive energy, right? But how about a highly sensitive person? It depends. If the vibe is high, but they are playing loud music in the background, this can be jarring for a highly sensitive person. Highly sensitive person can easily get overwhelmed by sensory overload, even if you are with a large group of positive people. But there are a lot of conversation going on at the same time. People are breaking into small little groups, and they're having their own individual conversation. This can be very overwhelming for a highly sensitive person because it's too noisy, and most highly sensitive person are highly sensitive to sounds. In this video, I will discuss the main difference between the two so that you will know whether you are an empath or a highly sensitive person, or you are both, like me. Highly sensitive person, HSP, is a term coined by research psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron in her book of the same name. Basically, highly sensitive person are highly sensitive to two things. Number one is the emotional input. Number two is the sensory input. When we talk about empath, we are mostly referring to emotional empath, individual who feels other people's emotion as our own. This coincides with the emotional input that HSP are highly sensitive to. However, there is a huge difference. For empath, how other people feels equals to how we feel. For HSP, how other people feel affects how we feel. Can you see the difference? As empath, when we have not developed good enough boundaries, we tend to absorb or match other people's emotion very easily. If someone is angry, we will feel angry too. If someone is down and depressed, we will feel depressed too. But for highly sensitive people, it's not like that. If someone is angry, maybe their anger is directed at us, we may feel hurt, or we may feel disappointed that we make someone angry. Or if the anger isn't directed at us, we may empathize with the other person or what they are going through. So for empath, we internalize other people's emotion and we feel it in our body. HSP, on the other hand, are affected by the emotional input that we receive from our immediate environment, but there is no internalization. A new emotion, our emotion, is created in response to the emotional input. So empath focus tends to be external. We focus on other people's emotion, while highly sensitive people focus tends to be more internal. It has to do with our internal experiences. So let me give you an example to illustrate this better. You may have heard of this story from my previous video. When I was young, there was this crime documentary show on TV. Once they show a murder scene, and I ran into the room. The highly sensitive part of me doesn't like the violent movie or TV shows. We find this external stimulation very disturbing. It feels very chaotic and uncomfortable in the body. It makes me feel very uneasy, and as a little child, I was very scared. But there is something more going on. The empath part of me takes on the emotion of the victim and the murderer. I'm not just empathizing with the victim here. I felt the powerlessness of the victim. I also felt the anger of the murderer. So there are three emotions going on at the same time. The emotion of the victim, the emotion of the murderer, and also my own emotion. It's very confusing for a kid at that time. It's easy to confuse empath with highly sensitive people because most empaths are HSP too. However, not all HSP takes on other people's emotion as their own, so they don't identify themselves as empath. When we talk about empath, there is also a spiritual component to it that is missing from the highly sensitive people. So empaths are sensitive to energetic fields, especially for intuitive empath. We know when the vibe is off or someone or something give us a very bad vibe. What empaths are using is their sixth sense. It could be clairvoyant. We could see things beyond our physical eyes. We may see things that other people may not see. For emotional empath, it's mostly clairsentient. We sense and feel emotion, vibes, and energy very easily. Even when there is no logic or actual tangible evidence to something, we can also feel and sense the energy. As mentioned previously, highly sensitive people are sensitive to sensory input. For example, we may be sensitive to bright lights, loud noises, strong smell, and caffeine. But all these are received by your five senses. It's about the physical, tangible things. Like my dad, a little bit of noise or smell he couldn't stand. He would feel very agitated. But he's not an empath. He doesn't pay attention to the energetic side of things, the spiritual side of things. And when it comes to the experience between an empath and a highly sensitive person, it can be very different. When there is a sensory overload for highly sensitive people, we feel it in our nerves. Like when there is drilling sounds at a construction site, I feel my nerves shaking. Like it's a very uncomfortable feeling. But what I need to learn is to soothe my nerve and make my body feel calmer. But when an empath receives intuitive messages, it's a feeling of certainty and knowing. Even if you feel and take on someone else's negative emotion, and that makes you feel very drained, there is still this knowing that you know how they are feeling. There's still this certainty. So empath and highly sensitive people are not exactly the same. They have very clear, distinct differences. If you are an empath and you find yourself easily drained by other people's emotion or problems, this video will help you detect the early warning signs before you even reach the point of burnout